Well, I have to say, it's not been successful. Um, I didn't actually realise Britain had jungle, but it's here, down below the cliffs of Dover. Anyway, uh, I've had a good look. This is where it is, up there somewhere. Um, I don't think I'm going to see it again. And so my £1,000 Mavic is gone. Hello guys, I'm Ian in London, and normally I'll be making videos about flying drones and just taking nice footage. I've had a Phantom Standard 3 for 18 months and I've had the Mavic for a couple of months. And all going well until last week when I had a bit of a mishap down over the White Cliffs of Dover and actually lost my Mavic. So what happened? Well, what I thought I'd do today is go through the flight and show you the mistakes I made so that you could have a bit of a laugh and hopefully avoid doing the same thing. For those that don't know, first of all, I'll explain how you can review your flight data because you may not know this. When you're flying your Mavic, all the time it's streaming the video back to your remote control and your phone. It's also streaming a load of technical data as well, and all of that is stored in the DJI 4 Go app, and you can actually play back your flight afterwards and review exactly what you did, and it shows you all the parameters that you have been flying with, the altitude, the distance, and even when you've taken snapshots or video. It'll superimpose that onto a map so you can actually see how the flight has gone, and I'm going to show you that on a smaller screen on my left. So what happened on the day? Well, I was down at the Battle of Britain Memorial down near Dover, fantastic place, and I was right on the cliff edge taking some amazing shots of the actual the memorial itself and the outline of the Spitfire propellers that they've got embedded in the grass that you can only see from the air. So I took some great pictures and some nice video footage, and then I thought that as the sun was setting and the cliffs were going red, I'd fly along the cliffs a little bit and just get a bit of shot, a bit of footage just flying along there. And that actually was where I made my first mistake. One of the things you should do when you're going to go on a long flight is always start off with a fully charged battery. I did. But if you're then going to do a bit of long distance flying, you should do that right at the beginning of your flight, not after you've been flying for a few minutes. And as you can see here, where I make the turn east, I'm only on 56% battery. That's over half your battery gone, because you always want to be landing with a good 10, 15, 20% really in your battery anyway. So anyway, as I'll say a few times, hindsight is easy, but that was my first mistake. Second mistake was I was flying downwind. Now, if you're going to do any long distance flying, again, you should be flying into the wind in the first part of your flight so that it's doing the hardest work as you're at the beginning when you've still got most battery. Then when you turn around, it's coming back with the wind and you should be able to land without issue. And in fairness to me, I realised what I was doing quite quickly there. So I thought, right, okay, I don't want to get caught out like that. I'll turn around and bring it back towards myself. So that was then the third mistake that I made. Rather than hitting the automatic return to home, I actually just tried to fly it back to myself. Now, there was a reason. Again, I'd set the return to home altitude 40 meters, it's about 120, 130 feet above my takeoff point so that it would avoid any trees in the area. But I was actually flying below the cliff and the wind was coming from behind me. So I figured if I hit the return to home, it was going to unnecessarily rise and be exposed to even stronger winds. So I didn't really worry too much. I was just flying back towards me, and I watched the distance counting down from 800, 700, 600 and got to 500 meters, yards. And then it started slowing right down. And this is where I started to get a little bit concerned. I figured, well, actually it really is struggling, and it's being slowed right down by the wind. So at that point I'm thinking, okay, what's the best thing I can do here? Flick it into sports mode. Now I know that sports mode will use a lot more of your battery, but when I was faced with the idea that it was being blown backwards by the wind, I figured that was my best bet. So I put it into sports mode and I've got the lever right down, trying to make it come back to me as fast as I can. So you can imagine my concern and panic when I see the distance starting to actually count up again. And from my perspective, it's being blown right off course, and that's when I really did start to get pretty concerned. So one of the features that the Mavic has actually got is that it will constantly try and calculate how much battery it's got versus how much work it's got to do to get back to you. And you've really got to work hard to lose it. However, in my case, when the automatic return to home popped up, warning me that the battery level was getting low and that I should return to home immediately, again, because I was worried that it was going to rise above the cliff face, I actually overrode that to try and keep it down low above the ground, and therefore in a lower wind. So there's me thinking that I'm doing the very best thing to try and get my Mavic back, and in the worst case scenario I could have actually landed down at the bottom of the cliffs. And it was at that point that I suddenly recognized a little bit of parkland in the video monitor, and I realized what had actually happened. Instead of flying directly back towards me, I'd actually flown at an angle, and all that had happened was when it got down to around 450 meters, it was actually just flying past me 450 meters away. And then of course it just carries on, and when I put it into sports mode, it carried on a lot faster, and suddenly I find myself a good 800-900 meters away, and I'm now down to less than 15% battery. So again, I think to myself, right, well, the best thing I can do, I've got sea water on one side and I've got scrubland on another side. The best thing I can do is land in that park. It was a 2-minute drive away, and I figured that I would land it and then just run back to the car, drive down before some kid picked it up. So I lowered the altitude down, and I actually watched it land in the park via the video monitor. Could see the blades of grass suddenly appear in the lens, held it down another 3 seconds and figured we're safe. So at that point I ran back to the car, drove down, and then spent a good hour searching for this Mavic, including asking people whether or not they'd seen anybody pick it up. So after an hour, I realised something had gone wrong, and it was at that point I actually opened up my flight data on the phone, and that's when it hit me. What does a Mavic do the moment it loses its contact with its remote control? It returns to home. And the moment I had run back towards the car, if you can imagine, I'm at the cliff edge, the Mavic is way down here, I run back to the car, and you've got this entire mass of land that's blocking the signal. And all that happened was that the Mavic lost signal and took off. It was 120 meters, that's a good 500 feet below me, because it was at the bottom of the cliffs and I was at the top. My return to home altitude was 40 meters above me, so it raised itself a good 160 meters from its landing point. And then it tried to fly back in a straight line to me. And funnily enough, it ran out of battery pretty much halfway between where it was and where I was. And you can see the flight path and roughly where it went. So I have to say that that kind of like pretty much threw me, and it was getting dark. So I went back down the following day and spent a good 3 or 4 hours searching that scrubland to try and find exactly, to try and find the Mavic. I had exactly the last known coordinates, but they were just that. They were the last known coordinates. It had probably flown on a little longer, or if the batteries had run out, it could have fallen down in a bit of an angle. So after a good 4.5 hours searching, I finally called it a day, and headed home. So that, unfortunately, is how I managed to lose my Mavic. Hindsight is a good fun thing. I'm sure there's many of you thinking, well, what a dick. You kind of asked for that to happen. And you know, I have to say that at no time was I actually mucking about. I genuinely thought I was doing the right thing, and I was probably trying to be a bit too smart and too clever. End of the day, if you get into any problems, you just hit that return to home. So, what can you take away with this? My advice: well, before you take off, always make sure that you have got your return to home point set. She says it in a lovely little voice. The home point has been set. Please check it on the map. And make sure that your return to home altitude is higher than any of the trees or anything around you. Don't start off on a flight unless you're on a full battery. Make use of the return to home button. The other thing I did wrong in the park was I tried to land it manually. It's got an auto land feature as well. You just press it and it will go down and it will land. And if I'd used that, it would have been sitting in the park waiting for me. So again, if you do find yourself having to land far away, use that auto land function to land exactly where it is, and then it will turn the rotors off. And finally, my advice would be just don't push your luck too much. I mean, this thing costs over £1,000. I'm £1,000 down. £1,000, $1,000. It's all about the same. I've got better things I could be spending my money on. But in saying all of that, I still think I had a fair bit of bad luck, and I had a few things stacking up. So I have now got a replacement Mavic. They're shipping them out a bit faster now. I'm flying a little bit more careful, and I'd like to think I'd learned a little bit from this. And I'm still having great fun making some nice videos. So hope you can take something away, guys, and have fun. Cheers.